Hi, my name is Benedict. People ask over and over, how do I get my drums to seem powerful and present in the mix without blowing the levels? Especially seeing people want to make their levels absurdly over loud. We won't get into that in this. What I have here is not what you think you want to hear, but the reason for these choices is so you're really facing the dramas. This is a very kooky kit that has incredibly high transients, therefore it will blow levels before you even think it's loud. Watch the meters. Sounds like nothing. It's already clipping. So as you see, your RMS is low, your peaks are really, really high. This is a great example of the problem that we face when working with drums. Now, the common solution that people will get is to find the fastest compressor that they can and try and control the transient. The problem is that as you push down the transient, you push down the body. Now, for anyone who doesn't understand, the transient is the click, the very first bit on the beginning. It tells you a lot about the sound to come, and the body is the bit that comes after. So if it's a kick drum, transient is going to be click of pedal going to skin, click, and the body is the whoomp that comes after. The click can be incredibly loud, but goes by so fast that we can't really hear it. And the whoomp is, well, problematic. We want to hear it, but at the same time it's problematic because it's got huge amounts of body level, even though the transient has moved past really fast. So kooky kit. So common things that people will say, oh, how you solve that is by doing stuff like this. Okay, we have improved that to make it a little bit more hearable by adding drive. We've made it a little bit more hearable and rolled off some of the numbers in terms of level. Yet that's good, but it sounds horrid. We'll fold that guy up because it's not going to be about distortion. It's a pretty extreme kind of distortion I was playing with there. The next one will be to EQ it. Okay, so we have actually a slightly better sound here. And then to EQ it. This is not a tut on EQing, but as you see here, I've given a little bit to the bottom end. We'll just sort those bands, so a little bit at the thumb. More on the punch of that. Pulled out some of the mids, which is a personal choice. Depends what you want to do, but I know more people would want to hear that. And then we've gotten rid of that immense transient there. You probably saw my levels blow. And pulled back in a little of the snap. So remember, great mixing is about getting the most result with the least actual action on the meters. So what we aim for is not huge amounts of 30 hertz. That's useless. There's nothing happening there at all that is useful. We want punch. So we've given some of it here in the thumb, but it's more in the beta here that we've pulled through. Punch, snap, and then sizzle. Now this kit has an absurd amount of sizzle, in which case we've had to control that, and that's useful to know because often kits have far too much sizzle, but you've got to make it feel like you've got good punch, good snap, good sizzle. If we take our EQs on but turn off the drive, hear how we've lost snap and sizzle. So the reason that people present distortion is because it helps you to get more snap and sizzle. Snap being more like the snare part of it, but also on the front of the kick drum. There's just plain distortion there, but it's an interesting way of handling this kit, which is not a do everything all the time exactly this way. I loathe seeing that in groups and forums. It's really dumb. I would not do any of that stuff until I had a piece, and then I would build that around it to say, this is building the scene and story of this piece, not every piece. Assuming that every piece should have exactly the same scene and story is, well, you might as well just go make it with AI. Now, here's the bit where it really gets fun, and the thing that I see people not do. Only now am I introducing a compressor. I'm going to show with this guy. It's a freebie. Now, the first problem that we've got here is that when we punch this in, it gets louder. Bad thing. I did talk to the dev about this, kind of got a little bit of a spray for it. In this case, make sure that this isn't even Steven. I've known from practical work that this is roughly even Steven for this guy. Lots of compressors, especially the modern ones that are playing sound goodifiers, will have auto sound levelers, this, that and the other. Turn them the F off. They are very, very bad for you. No matter how much the marketing says they're good, they are bad. So let's start with an even Steven going in and out. Now here's what we want to do. Remember I said most people will grab the fastest compressor they can to try and tame the transient and then wonder why it makes their drums sound weaker. Big fail. Even with a highly transient thing like this, we're going to do what is called groove compression. Most of us know this as glue compression, and you get the SSL type mixer with the it's fine, you can do it with any decent compressor, but not so much some of the modern ones which are all about splatsville. This is a very, very cool compressor for absolutely no dollars. I paid $20 or something or other for it many years ago, and it's probably the single or second most used compressor that I have. It's a workhorse. So what we do is this. We start by making sure we've got even Steven on the outs. We take our peak reduction and we throw it right up. That is our threshold in this case. So we turn our threshold to as low as possible. I'm going to show you this again with a different compressor. So we're hammering this. Now people are going to be saying, but it sounds like shit. Yeah, of course it does. We're not interested in how it sounds. We're only and ever interested in how it feels when mixing. If you're mixing with your front brain, you're going to get wrong every time. You need to mix with your feelings. So where they say use your ears, what they're really saying is use the back brain and your feelings. The ears being the pathway to that. Now, we've got absurd amounts of bite, that's great. We're going to make that even more by turning up our ratio really high. This is going to bend a little on your compressor, but 16:1 is good. Some of them, when you go to limiting or what have you, they just don't behave as compressory anymore. And that's fine. Just 16:1 will do the job. Give or take, there's no particular number. It's just got to be really digging in deep. So as you hear there, we've got some pretty deeping going on. We'll pull that back again just so we can hear. Remember, all we're chasing is groove here. I raise the attack. If I raise it so far, absolutely everything's getting through, might as well not be compressing, sort of thing. There will be a point there, you can hear that it's collecting too much transient. My drum just sounds weird. But there, I'm letting the beginning of everything through. So I've got the transient and the beginning of the body. So that's enough for the brain of the listener to clearly identify what's going on here. Get that. You will need to practice this. If you try this once and go, I can't get it, A, you're not using your feelings, you're using logic, and logic will screw you on this every time. Real mix engineers, you'll see, often move quite differently from the people who are doing tutorials and what have you. Watch CLA, the guy just throws knobs all over the place. While I don't love the bands that he works with, he's a great way of going, oh, okay, this is somebody who's in a flow state, not sitting here thinking about what does U-Boob approve of, what have you. So we've got our attack letting not only our first transient but the beginning of the body through, so we've got a very coherent kit, if not a slightly truncated one. Now we look at our release. We raise this, and here, can you hear we've got a very pronounced groove. It's a little pronounced and stilted, but this is good. This is what we're looking for. Remember, as I said, we don't listen, we feel. We feel that point where the groove happens. If you're already chair dancing just to try and prove how cool you are, you will not get this. But if you're sitting sort of quite still and feeling, then there'll come a point where you go, funkin' groovin'. That's when you got it right. Again, you must practice this. If you do not take time out of sessions to practice this, just using, random put together drivel like this, you'll never get there. So now we've got our timing for this groove. Oh, the other caveat, do not use BPM or mathematical numbers based on BPM syncs to do this. That will not be a groove. You might as well just flatten it with a FET. It's about the groove of this piece. How do these drums work together? Now we're going to pull this back. I'm also going to pull this back. I love working on this guy with about a 2 to 1. Most times I'll use about a 2 to 1. And 2 or 3 dB is normally going to be doing it right. Always use the gain reduction meter, not anything else. 2 to 3 dB is plenty. So off, flat, doesn't really only have we gained more, but we have lost some level. Now this is a good thing. I'm not going to gain compensate here like a tool, because it's a tool move to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that. When it comes to actually mixing, then I would have my bass and my drums in a rhythm bus, at which point I would be doing this. And then I would balance that with the rest of the mix. Commonly I mix drums last. It's rare that I will start a mix with the drums first, even if it's a drum-driven mix, because drums are a dime a dozen. Whatever's on top should be unique. We got to make that unique. So now that we've got that's moving really, really nicely. Bearing in mind we've got no context for what it's supposed to move like, but I've got a sense of like, that's going really nicely. Look at our levels. Our RMS are roughly where they were before. But our peaks, and this is why you must work with both RMS and peak, we've dropped down 6 dB at the extreme. We can probably push quite a few more dB there, meaning I can get louder. But I'm not going to do that till I master. So when it comes over to mastering, obviously I'm getting my levels up sort of where I want them to be. Let's just, well, we'll add that 6 dB. Yep, we're still safe. Now in the mastering, I'm going to do the same process again, and this is why you must not compress too hard at the drums or the drum bass. We're going to do exactly the same process. You see I've already got this set up. My threshold is thrown as low as possible. My ratio is going to be up at stupid. My attack and release are set to as close to 0. A few compressors will really go to almost 0. You're going to have some difficulty because they're just going to distort straight away. So if that's one of these with like a 0 millisecond release, that's just a wave shaper, you will want to raise that to 5 or 10 milliseconds whenever it clearly stops being a distortion unit. So I've got my master. I should have other music happening with this. I can turn this threshold right down, and exactly the same process. Saying, oh well, this is the number I used over here, so I'm going to clone it over here. Dumb decision. Because not every compressor moves at the same rates. So that's the difference between a compressor and another compressor, is that their math is slightly different, so they move differently. This is all about move, it's not about numbers. So we feel that move. Also because at that point where you've only got drums or drums and bass, you've got one signal. When you've got a full piece, Robbie Williams singing and someone playing guitars and what have you, Eddie Van Halen, then we've got a different signal. So we need to find how it moves. If we're doing this listening to only drums, going, I'll apply my drums to the rest of everything else, it could be a very wise move. Chances are it's probably a really dick move. So hear the whole thing, including Robbie and Eddie. Okay, we're getting a nice sense of everything coming through. Okay, again, I'm going to pull this back to about a 2 to 1. It works very nicely in certain situations, so like with a 1.5. It used to be quite common in the 70s and 80s. People would have really low ratios. And then we turn our threshold back to... Can you hear how that's suddenly become manly? What happens is where we've got compression happening there on a track or a bus, and then we do compression on top of that, is they don't just add 2 dB of compression to 2 dB of compression. No, it's more like 20 dB of compression. There's some scary logarithmic or exponential or something or other maths that goes on in there. All you need to know is it happens, not how it happens. So if I'm compressing 2 dB here and compressing 2 dB here, I've got a lot of movement happening there. So flat, very punchy. That's what we were looking for. The other feature that you will find in some compressors is a soft knee. Soft knees can behave differently. Most compressors will tend to put the knee around the threshold. So if your threshold's at -6, and if you set 6 dB of soft knee, which is a huge soft knee, then you'd have 3 dB below the point, 3 dB above the point. This compressor is a little unusual in that it takes all of its softness below. So if I were to set, and you can't set, I don't know what the knee on this is, but it works nicely. If we were to set that 6 dB of soft knee, it would be 6 dB ending at achieving exactly what we've put on the knob at the threshold point. Again, all you have to do is just understand that. Sit there with a pen and draw it out on a napkin, draw it on your own hand, whatever. That helps your brain to go, oh, I grok this. Forget the maths. The maths is irrelevant. It's just a way of explaining what's happening. So soft knee in this case will actually tend to take a little bit more than you had before, but not always. So soft knee means that as it's coming to the threshold, or above or around the threshold, rather than just going from nothing happening, like 1 to 1, we will transition over X number of dB to achieve what you have set. So we can either go with a higher compression ratio. As you see there, that softens that off. Or stay where we were and simply use a bit more threshold. There's no right or wrong here, but particularly at a mastering point, a softer ratio at this point means that you get a smoother, cooler groove, a groovier groove, rather than the kind of thing. Now, I know some people think that's super cool, but it's very rare that you will work on things, with the possible exception of maybe death metal or I don't know, what did it used to be called? There was a really aggressive form of house trance, what have you. You don't even hear it anymore. It mostly came out on a label called Earache, or a metal record label. Then you might want a really jerky kind of thing on your master. You've got to experiment with this, find what works for the situation. But nonetheless, we've got these working together. And it's only through trying this yourself and feeling in the AB, it's like, oh, that does feel better. It just grooves better. It doesn't sound better, it grooves better. That's what matters. Then, of course, see how we've actually got something that grabs your attention better whilst having lost a few dB. No longer tripping the meter here. I can push this up. Not all my meters are super happy here. Some of the very digital ones are uncool about this. So we'll pull that back just a little bit, because remember, this drum machine is very, very transient here. It's coping with that. So see here, I don't use fast limiting. I use a soft clip. I might just increase that. Yep, now the meters are happier. And we don't want to be doing stupid things like just going, oh yeah, let's just push like 47,000 dB into the limiter, because we've got this feeling ladder by creating a bigger dynamic, a bigger crest factor, as in a bigger difference between our RMS and our peak. That's dynamics. We want that to be quite big. 12 dB roughly is what I work on. If we just go and say, oh, I'm going to limit as hard and as fast as I can and push as many things as I can in, see how we've lost groove. It might just be louder on the surface, but now we've lost the bit that really grabs people, which is the grooviness. Great, that's basically it. Again, as another way of looking, if we've got this on our iPhone, turn off this, turn off these, we can hear what's going on the top of things, totally ignoring the fact that this is probably distorting, but we are really challenged with the lower half of it. The punch is just missing. We've got lots of sizzle, a kind of a snap, but it's a bad snap, and it's just not getting anywhere. So put it back in. Straight away that's improved, but now it's really, and we'll put this back in. Now we have reduced some of the minor elements of this, but notice straight away when we go here, we've got that, and it's very easy to sing along to. I didn't practice that. This is how we get our drums to punch and work really well in a mix overall. You can't do it at one point. You see I've got three things, and this is pretty dramatic behavior because it's a very dramatic kind of a kit. I use this quite a lot, but it's not for the faint of heart initially. And then we can double up a little bit, and we end up with something that mixes and comes out real nice. If you have questions, ask them down below. If you actually want somebody who's got experience in this stuff to help you mix, reach out.